Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Kimberly. I'm a developer over at Slack. Prior to working at Slack, I was a web developer and accessibility specialist at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And my talk today is going to be about how you can test your websites for web accessibility. In a nutshell, it's going to talk about some common accessibility problems that you can debug using some very simple tools. This is not a replacement for usability testing. If you want to see how your website will work for people with disabilities, the best way to do that is to actually bring someone in to talk about that. But before you do that, it's always good to do a quick diagnostic to make sure that you're using your time effectively. So this talk is a shorter version of my 30-minute version of this talk. It's only 10 minutes. If you have any questions, I'll be at the back, I'll be in the hallway track, and I'll be happy to answer them. So when we're developing accessible apps, we look to these principles. They're called the POUR principles. We want to make sure that our apps are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And what that means is that you should be able to perceive what is on the website using more than just sight or using more than just sound. Do you have captions for a video? Do you have alt text so that if someone can't see the image, the screen reader can read out what that image is about? Are you using color in a way that if someone is colorblind, they'll be able to tell if that error message is green for go or red for bad? These are just some of the things that we're looking for. We also want to make sure that it's operable by something other than your mouse. So I'll be spending a little bit of time on this. We want to make sure that it's keyboard accessible and that assistive technology can really access that website. We want to make sure that it's understandable. There's a joke in the accessibility community that if something has terrible UX and no one can use it, it's probably equally accessible for people with and without disabilities. But you don't want to be that website. You want to make sure that you have good form validation and you have good UX so that everyone can use your website. And we want to make sure that it's robust and future-proof so that no matter what assistive devices come out, your website is ready for them. And so one of the first things that I do is I make a pass with automated tools. Automated tools aren't perfect. You can't rely on them for everything. They are good, though, for things that sometimes humans are bad at. Things like low color contrast combinations. They know exactly what to look for. Missing alt text on images. It's very easy to miss when there is a missing alt text tag, so they can catch that for you. Missing labels, bad link descriptions. And this is kind of what it looks like. So for this form, you can see I will describe for the people who cannot see, that there is low color contrast on some of the fields, and so the automated tool is saying that there is a color contrast ratio of 3.86 to 1, when the guideline asks for 4.5 to 1. And so if you're using this tool and you hover over the error messages, it'll tell you what you need to do in order to fix that. But it can't catch everything. There's also a guideline that you should use more than just colors to denote errors. So if someone hasn't filled out the field in a form, you should be using something other than just a red outline to tell that they need to fill out that field. Your automated tools might not catch that. And so you do need to know what the guidelines are, but for a good first pass, for a good way to find out where there is smoke, where you can actually improve, it'll spot some problem areas in your website. Some suggested tools. I really like to use Axcore, which you can use as both a browser extension or a CLI tool if you want to use this in a CI process with your developers. Google Lighthouse is also a great tool. It uses Axcore as its foundation and also has some performance tools built in. And Khan Academy's Totally is what you saw in the previous slide, which is a visual bookmarklet that I like to use for. It's great for taking screenshots and showing it to stakeholders so that you can show them this is what the problem with the design is. And the other thing that you can do is always be keyboard testing. Keyboard testing is important because a lot of assistive devices out there use input that is very similar to keyboard input to navigate. So SIP and puff devices, for instance, or switch devices use input very similar to tabbing forward and tabbing back. Screen readers can use Braille devices that also use input very similar to that, or people can use an actual keyboard to navigate a screen reader. You might not know how to use all of these assistive devices. It's great if you have someone on staff that does, but to get started, you do know how to use a keyboard. And so keyboard testing is fairly simple. This is the basic navigation. It's not that difficult to do. If you hit tab, you should be able to move forward to the next button, the next link, or the next navigable item. If you hit shift tab, you should be able to go backwards. You also might need to use the enter key, spacebar key, and arrow keys to select drop-downs, to select buttons, to scroll through auto-completes. And all of these things are enumerated in the WCAG. WebAIM is a website that I like to use that has a thorough guide on how to do this, since I have to speed through it because it's only 10 minutes, and I'll have links at the end of the presentation. So before you get started, you may need to turn on keyboard accessibility. This is something that if you're using an assistive device, you don't have to do, so don't worry about it for your constituents. But what you should do is you should go on System Preferences, go to Keyboard, Shortcuts, and then turn on full keyboard access. The path for Windows is also very similar. So this is what testing a website for keyboard navigability will look like. So this is an example from a Shopify app, and as you can see, when you're hitting tab, you'll have a focus on the things that are actual links. So you know that those shoes that are on this GIF right here, they have a blue focus as you tab through them. That means that they're links, and you could actually click on them. Same with the button, and same with the checkboxes to unselect one of these things to add to your cart. So if you were to hit the space bar on one of the select things, you can just unselect that. On Slack.com, which is the website that I just recently finished working on, we also have a feature where we have a skip link so that people can skip all of the navigation items in the top and save themselves some repetitive clicking. We make sure that things like Your Workspaces, which is a button, that stuff inside of the little flyout window that comes out is also keyboard navigable, which is something that sometimes you will see places where the website is mostly keyboard navigable, but there are sections. If people need to use that portion of the website and they can't because a keyboard can't access it, then your website is not accessible. So I like to ask these 4 questions. There are more questions that you can ask when you're keyboard navigating, but you want to make sure you can navigate everything with a keyboard. You want to be able to make sure that you can skip repetitive links and that you can see where your focus is. As I mentioned earlier, keyboard navigation is for more than just screen readers. There are assistive devices like Sip and Puff and just plain keyboard where people might not have mobility, but they can definitely see. And so being able to see where they are on the website is very helpful. And you want to make sure there aren't any bugs, that your keyboard focus doesn't get stuck in a modal or in any components that you have on your website. And these are all enumerated in the WCAG. And then the third thing that you can do is you have to learn more about accessibility. My favorite resources are WebAIM for learning how to use keyboard navigability, for getting started with screen readers. The WCAG is the gold standard for the accessibility guidelines. They also have authoring practices and guidelines that you can look at if ever you want very thorough documentation on how to make your website accessible. And then another resource, which is great, is this Udacity course on web accessibility that has been created by some of the top engineers on accessibility at Google. The course is free, and so I would highly recommend that you encourage your developers to take this course and learn more about web accessibility. So thank you for your time. This is my handle. You can always email me or mention me at Kimberley Munoz on Twitter. I'll also be in the hallway to answer any questions. Thank you.